Morning, everyone. My name is Scott Wright. I am the Acting Deputy Director of the Infrastructure Division of DFA. This was a recently created division as of July 1st of last year. And we are tasked with focusing on infrastructure throughout the state of New Mexico. And the reason I'm here today is because the CDBG program has transitioned from local government division to the infrastructure division. In that transition, we're going to have, in all likelihood, Wesley Billingsley, who is our division director, serve as the chair for the CDC. You may remember him. He was formerly the division director of local government division. And for those of you that have been doing CDBG for a minute, I have been involved with CDBG projects in the past. So I feel with Donna and the team that she's assembled, we're very well positioned for continued success in the CDBG program. I will ask for some of your patience in this transition. It hasn't been as easy as some would have thought. There's a lot of logistical issues, MOU budget issues, things like that that are still being ironed out. So just appreciate your patience during this transitional process. I wanted to be clear that this is 2024 CDBG funding that was allocated last year. And, Donna and her team have made a conscious decision to set aside this funding to be supplemental, essentially to bring projects that are close to completion, that are just lacking a little bit of funding to the finish line. And it's worth noting that there is a potential risk involved in this from the DFA perspective, because we really do need to allocate these funds or risk reverting them. So with that being said, I just wanted to state that we are here to help you. We're here to support you and get these projects across the finish line and not have to dig into your operating budgets or wait on potential future capital outlay, which could stall a project. The intent is to get these projects completed as quickly as possible. So with that, I will pause in case anybody has questions about the transition from local government to the infrastructure division. If you do, please raise your hand. And if not, I will turn it over to Donna.
Thank you, Scott. Stephanie, do you see any questions?
No questions.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. I'm Donna Stewart. I'm the CDBG program manager, and I thank you so much for joining us this morning and for doing CDBG. So we are going to roll through this presentation, and if we could save questions to the end, that would be helpful. If you want to go ahead and put them in the chat, that would be fine. And then at the end, if anybody wants to raise their hand, Stephanie and Christina can help get you unmuted and even get you on camera if you so desire, so that we can hear you ask your questions if you'd like. So just a little technical check here. Can everybody see that I have advanced the slide? Can I get a thumbs up from someone?
Yes.
Or yes, okay, perfect. Alrighty, so as Scott said, we are talking about 2024 funds. And as many of you know, we allocated all of our 2024 funds with the CDC's approval to supplemental funding. And we had we used most of that funding last year, and we are still in the process of getting that funding from last year awarded. But we have an estimated 1.2 million still available. And so in our November meeting with the CDC, we got approval to use those funds for a rolling supplemental fund. And what this means is that there's no deadline. it's because it's rolling. And so that gives us more flexibility in being able to award when you actually need it. We were concerned last year when some of the previous recipients of the 2024 funding had some delay in us getting that CDC meeting arranged. And so the CDC has allowed us to make the selections of these awards in the interest of being expedient with getting them dispersed so that the projects that are needing the funding can get it when they need the funding. So that's our hope with this. Our goal remains to get more of these open projects closed, but I do want to let you all know that we're doing well with that. We had 70 when we started this supplemental funding. We had 70 open projects, and now we're at 60 with a few more poised to be officially closed when that last pay request is processed. So that's what this is all about. We want to see the projects get successfully closed. So this opportunity has no deadline because it is rolling. When the funds are exhausted, that will be the end of the opportunity, and we can let you know when that occurs. And just a note, when you're trying to decide if this opportunity might be right for your project, please consider that this funding, if applied to your project, will trigger BOP and BABA requirements to the whole project, even if the project was previously not subject to BOP and BABA. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you need more information about that, we can provide you with the official information, the quick guide. There's various resources online about BOP and BABA. So which projects are eligible? It's the grantees that have an open infrastructure project of from 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. And so all of those projects would be eligible for this opportunity. You may already have supplemental funding if you received the 2023 money or the previous 2024 tranche. That does not make you ineligible for this. You can get another tranche of supplemental funding. And there is no cap on it. So it means that we had this issue with the first supplemental funding, but the CDC has allowed us to not have a cap on the funds. However, the funds are limited, so keep in mind that when it's gone, it's gone. We're still needing for the scope to be the original scope, or we could look at a slight modification if you're needing a slight modification to the scope. We can't do anything more than that. And if it is a slight modification, it needs to be within the spirit of the original scope. And that's the same as the previous supplemental funding tranches that we've had. So many of you I know are familiar with that. We cannot have changes to the LMI. So that means if you are trying to do a slight change to your scope that's going to expand or decrease the number of beneficiaries, this opportunity would not be eligible for your project, or your project would not be eligible for this opportunity. The project needs to also be up to date on the requirements. And this is something that we introduced with the last tranche of supplemental funding. And we had some issues where the application said that we've done these items, but our files did not show those items. And so we are going to be looking more closely at that with this opportunity, because it isn't a lot of money. We're really preferring to help projects that are in construction and need this money like that. And it's going to make the difference between them being able to get this done or not. That said, if your project doesn't fit into that category and you want to work with your project manager to get in some of the items that are outstanding in terms of the administrative requirements or the environmental, you certainly are still able to apply. And you know, what's the worst that can happen is that your application wouldn't be awarded. So please, if you're considering it, feel free to apply if you meet the criteria on this page. So scoring criteria is might be necessary if we get more applications before, it's rolling. So we will be using criteria if we need to differentiate between the applications. If we get too many applications, we will also look at the scoring criteria and use them if even if we just get one application, because we need to make sure that it's fitting for our requirements. And we did mention in the instructions that we sent out that we do reserve the right not to fund a project. In other words, just because we still have money left it's not requiring DFA to fund the application. We're really looking for projects that are going to score high with these points and meet the criteria that we're setting forth, and that we're going to see results of having this project closed from providing this funding. So we'll look at each of these criteria, but just briefly, it's scope, need, documentation of the cost, timing, administration, and funding drawdown requirements. So on the scope, it's a possible 10 points, and we'll give the highest points to the applications that are maintaining that original scope. Lower scores for changes to the scope. And then just know that supplemental funding may not be requested for work beyond the original scope and intent of the project. So it's only a slight scope change that would be possible here. And so just to give kind of an example of how we might score a situation like this, say we get a funding request for increases in cost and to add 10 more gate valves, and I'm sorry, not increases in cost, but price, prices have increased, and we just want to add 10 more gate valves. So we would compare the original and proposed scope and kind of see like how big of a role are the gate valves playing there? Are those added gate valves constituting the majority of this extra expense, or is the majority of this extra expense coming from the increases in the price? And reflecting on those things, it might end up with a score in the range of 6 to 7. So that's just an example to see how we might view the scope. Need, up to 10 points for need. And here for the highest score, we're looking for a scope that there's no way to reduce the scope to make this project workable. And that is a possible high score, although with if the project is, anyway, hold that thought until we get to some of the other criteria. If a project is at risk of reversion without getting this additional funding, then definitely that would be a high need. And if the project is correcting environmental violations, that would also be a very high score. And there could be others, and please feel free to use the application to convince us of the need for not only for the project, but for the funding. What specifically is the problem that is going to be solved by this funding. And then on that note, the lowest score would be for replacing leveraging, or a project where whatever you're proposing to add may appear to be optional. And in other words, it could function without whatever the item is that's being added. So keep those things in mind on need. And then, of course, we're interested in seeing how well you're documenting the application itself and the extra cost. And so in viewing the cost estimates, we're trying to understand what is exactly the nature of this additional cost. Can we see that from your application? Was your application clear enough? And we'll go through the required parts of the application, but I would also say that you're welcome to send us a letter if you feel that the application form didn't allow you to put enough information and didn't allow you to really explain what it is you're trying to do with this funding. Feel free to add a letter and to help make that clear to us, because we really want to know what this additional funding is going to go for and understand how that is going to help you get this project completed. So yeah, of course, the higher scores are going to go for the maximum clarity on those points, and then the lowest scores would be if it's not really clear to us. Timing for 10 points, how far is the project from construction? And so here we're going to give the highest score for the projects that are already in construction. If we can help a project that has a change order that they're considering and they need to they need this extra piece of money to get them through this and see them through to a successful completion, that's going to be a higher score. A lower score would be projects that are farther from construction, and especially if the environmental is not complete. That often takes grantees a long time, as many of you know, and we'd really like this funding to go to folks who have already passed that milestone. Administration and progress to date for up to 15 points. And so this is what we talked about earlier. This is how the project is doing with all of those CDBG requirements. We know there's a lot, but keep in mind that we have those requirements for the sake of compliance and for the sake of protecting not only DFA, but also you as the grantee, as the recipient, and making sure that if there's an audit, that everything is compliant. So that's our goal. And with that, the requirements of the checklists of our project documents, the manual, it's really important to be progressing on that in a timely fashion. So higher score is going to go for a project that has submitted all their progress reports and they're up to date on it. If they've had monitorings, they've responded. They have not left project managers hanging after we've requested documents. You've completed the environmental and other federal and administrative requirements in the file. Your account is set up. You're ready to be able to submit a pay request. All of these things are critical for the project, and it's a lot harder to do at the 9th hour when you're trying to go into construction. So we're definitely going to give the highest scores to these projects that show that they are responsive to our guidance and that they are moving in accordance with our procedures and our requirements. Lowest score is going to go for a project that's missing key items or hasn't responded to monitorings, has not submitted progress reports, et cetera, et cetera. On that note, I would say, since this funding does not have a deadline, I would say if you feel your project is lacking in some of these areas, maybe set a goal for the project to catch up on some things and then look at submitting your application. We don't know how long it's going to last, so keep that in mind, but our priority has to be the projects that are making better progress in terms of the files. And then we have a new criteria that we did not have in the previous round, and that is IDIS is the federal database that we report to HUD in. And we are dealing